Yatani is set to present the 2020-2021 budget in Parliament as the nation holds its breath in an already suffocating economy due to the ravages of COVID-19. On this special coverage, we will make sense of the budget, break down the numbers, we'll explain to you where the coins are going to. Good morning, I am Abubakar Abdullahi. Thank you for, as always, making time for us. Remember, you can be part of this special broadcast. Send us a message on 22047. Call us on the number on your screen. Talk to us about your expectations. Where do you think the government should put more money in? But first, the public debt stock is currently standing at more than 6.3 trillion Kenya shillings, which is more than 60% of the country's GDP. The debt burden, which has received criticism, having risen from 39% in 2010. Treasury CS Ukur Yatani has, however, been defending the government's borrowing appetite. Joash Onsare begins our special coverage this morning.
Heavy on Treasury CS Ukur Yatani in his budget of 2020-2021 is the growing public debt, a debt that has risen to 6.3 trillion Kenya shillings, which is equivalent to 60% of GDP. In 2010, the public debt was at 39% of the GDP, which was approximately 1.2 billion Kenya shillings. Currently, the country facing a 3.2 trillion shillings and a 3.1 trillion domestic debt.
So if people are not consuming because of COVID-19, because they do not have money in their pocket, and people are not producing, organizations are not producing because of COVID-19, because of social distancing and lockdown, then it means that when we come up with a budget of 1.6 trillion, which is even higher than what was collected in 2018-2019, I think 1.58 trillion, when we did not have some of those challenges, then I think for me it is more ambitious, which brings a problem actually when it comes to how the budget is going to be implemented.
This will be the first time the external debt is increased by higher margin than domestic debt. Treasury CS Ukur Yatani, in defending the government's borrowing appetite, however, says the move is aimed at moving away from expensive commercial loans.
We must actualize real and actual fiscal consolidation to ensure that we continue to reduce on our budget deficit, so that we borrow less.
The issue of public debt is now an emergency in this country. I think we need to be bold and candid and tell the executive that we need a day to have a national dialogue on public debt.
Yatani's maiden budget coming at a time the global economy is shaky. According to International Monetary Fund, IMF, projections Kenya's economy growth is likely to remain flat this year. The House Committee on Budget, however, claims the 2020-2021 will be unrealistic.
I think the solution to the debt in this country is to renegotiate some of those debts. We cannot be paying 1 trillion interest on debts every year and expect to do anything using in a financial year.
Governments across Africa are currently faced by huge loan burdens, especially from China. These African governments have, however, called for the suspension of debt interest payments as the COVID-19 crisis deepens. Joash Onsare, TV47, Nairobi.
Well, today the Cabinet Secretary for Ukur Yatani will read in Parliament the budget highlights for 2020 and 2021 financial year and the revenue-raising measures. This will happen amidst the COVID-19 pandemic, which has now had adverse effect on the global economies. And in Kenya, the tax bracket has reduced significantly. Mwangi Maina tells us more.
Kenyans will be eagerly waiting for Mr. Austerity, the Cabinet Secretary for the National Treasury, Ambassador Ukur Yatani, for his maiden budget presentation to the country in the National Assembly. With a depressed economy reeling from the economic turmoil brought about by the novel coronavirus, Kenyans will be waiting for this man to make known what he has for them. Falling on the backdrop of the pandemic, this time round, things will be different. It will be a budget day like no other. Not too much color and pomp as the CS and his team make their way to the National Assembly chambers. and will present the budget in the presence of only 25% of MPs who will be in the chamber. The budget comes at a time when the country is facing massive job losses, missed revenue targets, reduced revenue allocation, and increased expenditure towards the fight against coronavirus. This means that Yatani and his team have to scratch their heads even harder to balance the tough equation.
Tutaendelea kuona ni kwa njia gani tutasaidiana na Wakenya wenzetu, haswa wale ambao wamelemewa kabisa, na tuone ni kwa njia gani tutaweza kuwasaidia katika wakati huu mgumu ambao tuko nao.
With the government having reduced value-added tax from 16 to 14% and reduction in payee and a tax relief for persons earning 24,000 shillings and less, this means the government has to look for means to sustain the economy. This will lead to more borrowing, to put more money in the pockets of Kenyans, with every sector looking up to Yatani. The Central Bank of Kenya says SMEs are most vulnerable, with 3/4 most likely not to make it past June since they lack capital. Last year, the economy grew downwards from 6.3% in 2018 to 5.4% in 2019, with a ravaged economy, floods, locust invasion, COVID-19 pandemic, and wanton misuse of public funds. The economy can only go down.
SMEs, MSMEs as well, don't have a lot of let's say, buffers in terms of credit or in terms of other resources that they can use. And therefore, they generally would die quickly. So they are very vulnerable in that sense. And as a matter of fact, there was a survey that was done at the end of April, and that survey indicated that three-quarters of SMEs, of the surveyed SMEs, do not have cash beyond 2 months.
Walking on a tightrope, CS Ukur Yatani and his East African counterparts are seeking a moratorium on paying foreign debts to allow the East African nations to at least survive on the little they have. Uganda, Tanzania and Rwanda will have their budgets read tomorrow. Yatani is a second Treasury CS under the Jubilee administration. His predecessor, Henry Rotich, left office early this year after being charged with corruption in court. Mwangi Maina, TV47, Nairobi.
Mimi naonelea hii budget wakisoma kesho hakuna kitu inasaidia mkaichi wa Kenya, sababu corona iko imeleta shida, ni kama gari imekwama kwa matope. Unaona? Huwezi kumaitoka ndani. So mimi ningeonelea hii budget hata ungewacha kwanza isome.
Kwa hivyo tungependelea ashukishe unga kabisa, ishuka, imepanda sana. Hata hamna hata maziwa. Iko juu zaidi. Maziwa saa hii mimi kwa nyumba yangu huwa nanunua ya 45 na sasa huwa nataka kwa wiki nitumia kama paketi 10. Sasa unaona hiyo ni pesa mingi sana maziwa peke yake.
Budget ikuwe rahisi kwa raia kama sisi, yani ikuwe chini, isikuwe waongeze vitu, maisha imekuwa ngumu.
My expectations is that watakuwa wamepunguza vitu, especially housing and you see like what has been happening. People have been, manyumba zimebomolewa. People don't have money right now, by the way. People don't have money.
Hamna Kenya itasaidia kwa sababu hata saizi mafuta ilishukishwa mpaka 84 shillings. Lakini hata mafuta yenyewe ukiweka kwa pikipiki kama sisi wana boda boda, hakuna kazi tunafanya nayo. Unaweka tu mafuta kwa pikipiki na kaa unazunguka tu nayo.
Ni budget ya watu wakubwa, si budget ya mwananchi wa kawaida. Tungeomba wangeangalia vile tumeathirika kwa ajili ya hii ugonjwa wa corona, na walete msaada wa mahitaji. Wakenya wako na mahitaji kwa sababu wameathirika, hata biashara hakuna.
All right, those are Kenyans expressing their expectations in as far as what they will want to be considered in the budget today is concerned. Remember, you can be part of this discussion. Send us as well what your expectations are. Twitter us at TV47KE. The hashtag to use is special budget. Remember, you can call us on the number on your screen as well. The budget, of course, 2.7 trillion budget, of which the government intends to spend 1.8 trillion of that on recurrent expenditure 904 billion shillings set aside to pay debt obligations. Of course, we have guests in studio as well who will be making sense of every coin and where it will be going to. Nonetheless, our reporters are equally on standby to brief us of what the latest is in as far as the budget presentations and, of course, the reactions to the budget are concerned. Let's bring in our reporter Joash Ansare, who is in Parliament, as I understand. Joash, a very good morning to you. What should Kenyans expect today from Ukur Yatani's 2.7 trillion budget?
Yes, Abubakar, I can get you clearly. We are at the Parliament buildings here in Nairobi, bringing to you updates up to speed, matters, budget, so that we can be able to discuss and find out what is really happening as far as this budget is concerned. And joining me, these are legislators from the Western Kenya region. They will be talking to us matters to do with budget and also the factors which have also contributed to, which are going now to lead to this particular budget, especially this time that we have a pandemic. And once more now we'll get Mheshimiwa, you talk to us. Tell us, what do you think about the current budget?
Yeah, thank you very much. Here, my name is Oku Kaunya, a Member of Parliament for Teso North. I'm here with my colleagues from Busia County. All of us are here. The issues that we want to see, particularly on the budget today, is of course in the backdrop of this pandemic, the COVID pandemic. We expect that we should improve our health facilities, and I believe that some of my colleagues here will comment more on that, particularly the issue of dealing with the health facilities and the setting up of isolation centers within the counties, especially in Busia, where we are now facing a very serious threat of COVID-19. We have had a problem in Malaba and Busia, and particularly related to truck drivers, where we have thousands of them. Like last week, we had over 4,000 of them, Busia and Malaba combined. And most of them are intermingling with the public. So the need to set up these isolation centers and also to equip the health facilities is very important for us to be able to make sure that this budget takes care of that. I think COVID-19 has woken us all up in terms of how much can we put into our health sector and make sure that the health facilities are up to the standard to be able to help the wananchi. We members of Parliament from Busia are really concerned that the truck driver issue has gone beyond. Busia now is ranking number 3 with over 200 now positive COVID-19 people, and most of them are truck drivers. Our concern is that these drivers are supposed to be tested from the point of exit, and another concern is that when they come here and they are not tested, they go across to Uganda, they are tested and brought back to Kenya. When they are brought back to Kenya, they intermingle with the people. So I think the isolation areas there and taking care of the staff that are dealing with those issues is very critical. The last 1 week alone, we have had more than 100 COVID positive cases in Malaba, for example. And our appeal to the government and the Minister of Health and, of course, Interior is that we should enforce that these drivers be tested from the point of exit. And we should set up an isolation center at Malaba to take care of even the locals, and we need mass testing for the locals. We also want to appeal to the county government. I think the governor of the county of Busia should now wake up. He should wake up because the situation is beyond. And I think we should commit all resources available to serve our people. That is very, very important. We have seen in Mombasa, the governor is fairly, very, so it's quite important. So I think I will leave this to my other colleagues, agreeing that whereas we have this budget today, the focus on health is very, very important. And I think we need to set up our medical facilities to the standard required.
Bila shaka huyo ni Mheshimiwa Ouka Kaunya ambaye akizungumza kuhusiana na masuala haya ya bajeti, na vile vile kuna waheshimiwa wengine. Mheshimiwa azungumza nasi kuhusiana na swala la bajeti hii. Ni bajeti ambayo inasomwa chini ya mambo mapya. Corona ipo na utapata kwamba hivi sasa hakuna mengi tu ambayo tunatarajia namna ambavyo imeweza kuwa kawaida.
I'm Geoffrey Makoha Odanga, the Member of Parliament for Matayos constituency. In addition to what Mheshimiwa Kaunya has stated, we would like the testing to be really done from Mombasa, where these trucks are coming from, and only those that have the negative certificate should be allowed to enter into our county. And this one now, we have reached a point where we are not going to be so much diplomatic, because we addressed it last week. We even met the IG of police, and all indications were that this was to be implemented. So far it hasn't. Our county has been free of the pandemic for all this time. The only the thing is that this pandemic, this virus is coming with the trucks. And these people, some of them do not even have the basics. They have not been tested, they have no certificate, they don't have basics like the masks, and they are, just wandering all over. Now from Busia, I think it is over 20 kilometers away from the border. And these people are interacting with the people in villages, eating food from them. They are not even sanitizing, they are not washing hands. Our people are in danger. The infections are going to be very big. Busia is going to suffer a lot. And we want support as the people of Busia. We want the focus to be on the Busia County and other border towns, so as to be able to help address this issue. We want also the sanitization of the trucks. All those trucks should be sanitized before they are allowed into the county. If this is not going to be done, the only solution left to us now will be to make noise, will be to tell people. We are going even to hit hard. We'll hit hard.
Labda Mheshimiwa uweze kuzungumzia bajeti hii ya mwaka huu. Labda unadhani bajeti ambazo zimekuwepo zimeweza kusaidia wananchi wa kawaida?
Kusema kweli, my name is Dr. Jambo Undo, MP Funyula, Busia County. We are making the budget today, or the ministers coming to read the revenue raising measures today. The budget has already been presented, and which the budget and the appropriation committee prepared a report. It's a fairly reduced budget, and it's already a bad situation. The COVID-19 has made it worse. The budgets that we have been generating all the years do not seem to be receiving adequate attention. We don't seem to be receiving enough support on the ground. The level of poverty keeps on increasing, the public debts ballooning, yet we don't see the results on the ground. And in view of the COVID pandemic, we're not so sure that there's going to be enough revenue collected to support this budget. The fear all of us have that the government will resort to massive borrowing, and our debt ceiling will be busted, and we are going to go into distress. So we just hope the government will rationalize the budget as we go along in line with the issues of corona and the after effects of corona. Thank you.
Bila shaka hivi sasa tutapata kwamba deni la kitaifa limeweza kuongezeka na kufikia trilioni 6.3. Labda serikali ifanye vipi ili kuweza kuhakikisha deni hili limeweza kupunguka, haswa katika kipindi hiki ambapo tuko na janga la nzige, janga la corona?
Kwa majina naitwa Mheshimiwa Rafael Wanjala, mbunge wa Budalangi, Busia County. Budget ya mwaka huu naiona kama budget haitasaidia wananchi, kwa sababu zile vitu ambazo zinasumbua sasa wananchi ni zile sioni kama budget imeangazia, kwa sababu kuna shida ya mafuriko, especially in counties like Busia na zinginezo. Sijaona mahali popote wameallocate pesa ya kutengeneza dams. Na sasa unajua chakula pia si kitu watu wanaweza tegemea tuwatalishwa na serikali, na chakula hiyo inakuja mara moja kwa miezi 3.
Kwa hivyo ingekuwa jambo la muhimu kwa hii budget kuangazia mambo ya kujenga mabawa huko juu, kuzuia maji kufurika kwa zile eneo zinazofurika maji kwa Busia County, hata paka imefika sasa Kakamega, Bungoma pia imefurika. Wakati inafurika inafanya watu wanakuwa maskini. Kwanza wanapoteza mimea yao, wanapoteza nyumba zao, wanapoteza vitu zao nyingi, magonjwa yanaingia na mambo hiyo yote. Na sasa shida, na sasa vile iko corona na hii mambo ya floods pia imeingia, inakuwa shida sana. Na sasa Busia ndio tuko na shida kubwa. Hata vile unatuona hivi tunatoka kuongea na Minister for Health. Wiki iliyopita tuliongea na Inspector General ya kwamba serikali ilisema lazima kila mtu apimwe kwanza na trailer yake kutoka Mombasa ndio itoke. Lakini barabara yote mimi nikipita, kwa sababu siku hizi hakuna ndege ya kwenda Kisumu, tunapita kwa barabara, police roadblocks ni nyingi sana. Lakini paka leo bado utapata mtu amefika Busia na bado hana certificate ya corona ile ambayo inasema yako negative na anafika huko. Kwa hivyo tunataka, najua Inspector General ni mgeni, lakini si mgeni wa kazi, ni mgeni kwa ofisi, lakini si mgeni wa kazi. He must take up the responsibility seriously. That sasa inafaa atueleze kama Busia ya kwamba wale DCI wake wako Busia, waingie kwa kila trakta na wachukue namba na waulize hizo trakta zilitoka kwa hii Mombasa lini na zilifika lini. Wale askari wote walikuwa kwa barabara siku hizo wafutwe kazi, kwa sababu barabara ile ya kwenda Busia ni moja. Lakini hawezi kaa hapa na ugonjwa inasambazwa Busia, hata askari wake wenyewe watakufa. Kwa hivyo yeye minister ashatoa order, na sisi tulisema wiki iliyopita, na hatutakuwa kwati ya kurudia vile tumesema. Kuanzia wiki ijayo mimi mwenyewe natoka weekend hii naenda huko, tunaenda kumobilize vijana. Wewe kama uko na trailer yako ukae na certificate, kama una certificate trailer yako tunaenda choma, wewe ndio umetuletea corona. Na hatutangoja serikali imeshindwa, sasa wacha watu wajitetee, because they swore to protect Kenyans against all these odds, but it seems the government has failed to protect.
Na wewe kama mheshimiwa umeweza kuwasilisha yale ambayo yanatakiwa ili zile dharura ziweze kuchukuliwa na kuweza kuhakikisha.
Nimekuambia wiki iliyopita tulikuwa kwa Inspector General, sisi wote tukakaa na yeye kwa ofisi yake, tukamwambia I enforce these laws. Jana governor wetu alikuwa na president, walikuwa 47 counties zote governors walikuwa huko, alisema sisi sasa tunatoka kwa Minister wa Health. Minister wa Health hata last week, hata juzi alizungumzia hii maneno, hata leo amezungumzia ya kwamba is not getting support kutoka kwa police. Police kazi yao wamechukua, barabara zimekuwa ATM kupokea pesa, wanaharibu jina ya police service. Kwa hivyo sisi hatutangoja tena. Tumesema kuanzia next week wewe toa trailer yako kama una certificate. Kama una certificate toa. Hamtaona Wanjala hapo trailer na mtaona.
Shukrani sana Mheshimiwa Wanjala kwa kuweza kutoa mapendekezo yao na yale ambayo mnatarajia kufanya. Bila shaka ni wabunge kutoka kaunti ya Busia wakiangazia masuala ya corona, masuala majanga ya yale ambayo yanaendelea katika taifa hili. Na kabla sijamaliza, niko na waheshimiwa wengine hapa kutoka eneo hilo waweze kutupatia mawili matatu kuhusiana na shughuli hii. Labda Mheshimiwa tuambie kufikia sasa kaunti yako hiyo, katika kaunti ya Busia, mikakati ndio imewekwa, kuna ambayo haijawekwa. Labda kuna masuala mengi tu hasa katika kipindi hiki cha majanga. Ikumbuke ya kwamba kuna wananchi ambao hawana uwezo kabisa, wengine wako nyumbani. Ni kipi ambacho unafanya kutoka katika lile eneo bunge lako kuhakikisha Wakenya wako wanapata nafasi ya kuweza kupata mahitaji ya kila siku?
Asante sana. Mimi naitwa Sakwa Bunyasi, mjumbe wa Nambale, Busia County. La kwanza kabisa ni kwamba bajeti ambayo inatolewa wakati kama huu inatakikana iwe bajeti ambayo inaangazia hasa yale ambayo inakumba watu mwaka huu wakati huu. Na kwetu Busia, janga la corona, sisi tuko mpakani na mnajua biashara nyingi zaidi ya nusu, 50% ya Kenya huenda Uganda, Jamhuri ya Kongo na kule nchini Rwanda na Jamhuri ya South Sudan. Zote zapitia Busia County, zinapitia Malaba ama Busia. Na yale mabadiliko yaliyofanywa juzi, kuweka inland depot Naivasha na kufanya clearance, hata hiyo ilikuwa imebadilisha hali kwa mpaka sana. Vijana hawana kazi. Hii imeleta uzito kubwa sana. Lakini sasa tuna janga la corona, na kwa sababu magari tunatumia magari kwenda hizo nchi ambazo nimetaja, na inaonekana kwamba system ambayo wanatuambia itafanywa haiko. Madereva wanafika huko bila kibali chochote kuonyesha kwamba hata walifanywa testing. Na inaonekana kwamba baada ya wiki kadhaa Busia inaweza kuwa sasa labda ya kwanza Kenya nzima. Na mimi ningeomba kwamba haya si mambo tu ya serikali gatuzi, ingawa ni muhimu sana serikali gatuzi naye yaamke ianze kuangazia mambo kiundani na kutupasha habari wamfikia wapi. Ukiwauliza wa county wanasema hawajapata pesa kutoka kwa serikali. Lakini nao pia kama kaunti zingine wana pesa zao zenyewe, bajeti yao ambao serikali kuu itaongeza tu juu. Tungependa kuelewa ni mpango gani wanafanya siku kwa siku kuhusu hii. Na upande wa bajeti kwa jumla, sisi watu wa Busia tuna haja ambazo sio tu za corona. Kwa mfano hili janga la mafuriko Budalangi ni kubwa sana. Na wana pesa kutoka World Bank. Kila ambacho hawajafanya ni kufanya mipango ya ndani ndio watumie hizo pesa. Tupate haya mabao ambao Mheshimiwa Wanjala alitaja, na tukumbuke kwamba watu wetu kokote waliko, sio tu Busia Budalangi, najua sehemu za West Pokot na sehemu zingine wamepata janga la mafuriko pia. Serikali lazima ionyeshe kwamba inawajali watu wao kwa kufikia kwa haraka chakula, jinsi ya kuishi wakiwa nje ya maboma yao, jinsi ya kupata nyumba, kujenga nyumba wakirudi. Kuna mambo mengi ya kufanya. Kwa hivyo mimi nakubaliana na wenzangu wote ambao wamesema, na kwa sababu lazima tulinde kaunti yetu, tutahakikisha kwamba magari ambayo inakuja na haina hiyo certificate hatutakubali iingie kaunti ya Busia. Na serikali, ni heri serikali iwe kipao mbele, kama sivyo sisi tutamobilize wananchi wenyewe wafunge hizo mipaka.
Asante sana. Bila shaka tumalize na mheshimiwa mmoja karibia hapa ili tuweze kuzungumzia swala la bajeti hii. Ni bajeti ambayo ni tofauti kabisa. Maoni yako ni yapi kuhusu bajeti hii?
Asante sana. Mheshimiwa Joseph Oyula, MP wa Butula. Sitaongea mingi sana kwa sababu wenzangu wameshasema, lakini letu siku ya leo ilikuwa upande wa COVID-19. Vile Busia inahangaika. Busia is not getting all the facilities that are required or that have been given to other counties. And yet we are at the border. Sooner or later, the number of the affected will supersede Nairobi number if we don't take action. And the only action we should follow is to make sure that these drivers get the negative certificate before they enter Busia. If they don't have that, as you have heard, we are going to mobilize our youth to make sure that no truck enters Busia. No truck enters Busia if the driver has no certificate. And that will be punitive to the other areas of economy. So it is important that the truck drivers are given certificate. There is no need for them to go and get certificate from Uganda. They should get certificate from Kenya before they proceed to Busia. So that is our concern. We have talked to the minister, and the minister supports our cause. Because we have to prevent it. We don't want our people to die like locusts.
Na bila shaka mpenzi mtazamaji, ndo kauli kutoka kwa waheshimiwa hawa kutoka eneo la Magharibi, haswa katika kaunti ya Busia, wakizungumzia masuala mbalimbali, masuala ya bajeti na vile vile masuala yanayozunguka swala hili la masuala ya bajeti ambayo inatarajiwa kusomwa hii leo. Hivyo basi, mpenzi mtazamaji, kufikia hapo tunatoka katika majengo haya ya bunge, lakini kikosi chetu kiko dhabiti kabisa ili kuweza kuhakikisha tunakujuza ni yapi ambayo yatakuwa yanajiri katika tukizungumzia masuala yote ya bajeti na masuala mbalimbali ambayo yanaathiri jamii na ambayo yanakuhusu kwa njia moja au nyingine. Kutoka kwangu na kuregesha studioni, endelee kupata taarifa zaidi kutoka kwa mwenzangu Abubakar Abdullahi.
Thank you. That is our reporter Josh Onsare, who was speaking to our section of Western region leaders, voicing today their concern over the COVID-19 status in the Western region, echoing, of course, what's happening in Busia. Remember, Busia County recorded 18 new COVID-19 cases as of yesterday. This making the total cases of Busia County to 248 cases of COVID-19. This, of course, making it the third county coming after Nairobi, which leads the pack in as far as COVID-19 cases are concerned. Mombasa, second. Busia, registering 18 cases yesterday. The total now stands at 248. Of course, the leaders are raising concern over the truck driver status. Busia being a border town, of course, a commercial gateway to the East African region as well. Of course, also they also talked about the budget, what the expectations are, and as far as the handling of COVID-19 is concerned. Nonetheless, I understand our reporter Mwangi Maina is also on standby and joins us in this special broadcast now. Mwangi, what are Kenyans saying as of now? What are their expectations?
Well, thank you so much, Abubakar Abdullahi. I can get you loud and clear. We are along the Moi Avenue downtown in Nairobi, and Kenyans continue to wait eagerly for the budget that will be read later this afternoon by the Treasury CS Ukur Yatani. And among the things Kenyans are expecting to hear from the Treasury CS is about the cost of living right now. We understand we are living in extraordinary times with the budget reading this year coming under in the backdrop of the coronavirus, and we have seen government has done, or rather government has put some measures to mitigate the effects of coronavirus. This being reducing the VAT tax, that is the value added tax, from 16% to 14%, and also for those people earning from 24,000 Kenya shillings and below, they are not taxed as per now. Some of the tax reliefs that the government through the President Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta said that, including the income tax that has continued to reduce. And right now I want to speak with traders here along the Moi Avenue. This place is known for sale of mobile phones, for sale of clothes, and these are some of the businesses that we call the small and medium enterprises. Remember, Abubakar Abdullahi, just a month ago, the governor of Central Bank of Kenya, Dr. Patrick Njoroge, said that most of these SMEs are not in a position to sustain themselves, saying that in the next 2 months, that is this month of June and the month of July, that most of these SMEs will not be in a position to sustain themselves. Reason because the cost of doing business in the country has gone up, and the business in the country is not doing very well, and the CBK said that a lot of people have defaulted in paying their loans. They said that the loans that have been defaulted have reached 13 times high. The last time we saw loans being defaulted to this level was in the year 2007, where there were the post-election violence. But this coronavirus has come to complicate things, especially the way the economy is running. As you can see here, not all the businesses are opened, especially when we enter here and see some of the businesses that are taking place. But earlier, when I was speaking with some of these traders, they were telling me that the cost of doing business here has gone up, and the sales have gone down since the coronavirus came into this country. And therefore, we want to speak with some of the traders here, and they tell us what are they expecting the Cabinet Secretary for the National Treasury to address the issues they are facing currently. You understand that most of these funds are brought from abroad. They're brought from outside the country. Some of these phones are shipped from China. They are shipped from different countries. And right now we understand that there are no flights that are coming to the country, whether they are commercial flights, whether they are ferrying people to different countries. And therefore, these traders will be able to tell us how are they operating right now when we are in this period of coronavirus, and how the business was before coronavirus, and how they expect, or rather, what are their expectations to when the budget will be read today by the Cabinet Secretary for the National Treasury, Ambassador Ukur Yatani. And maybe I want to speak with one of the mobile phone sellers here. He will tell us his name. He will tell us how the business was before coronavirus, how the business is currently right now, and what are your expectations when the budget will be read this afternoon. Welcome to TV47.
Thank you. My name is Peter. Yeah, with the business currently, if you compare the business previously before Corona, we can say it was better. But when coronavirus, the pandemic started, actually the business has tolerated completely. The sales are very slow in movement. The stock and the funds are not even coming on board. We also have those process of shipment. Things are not coming to the country currently. Even there's shortage of every electronic components.
And probably when the budget will be read today by the CS of the National Treasury, what do you expect the Treasury will address in matters pertaining these small businesses in the country?
Well, we expect the Treasury to address our business in terms of reducing taxes in some of the things that we are importing. And then at the same time, we expect they ease the process of clearance from the port, and they make it faster, since the process takes too long for a product to get to arrive to the shop.
For example, how long does it take for you to access your goods when they arrive from overseas, from the port of Mombasa and to the warehouse to your business? How long does it take for you to get your goods that you have shipped from abroad?
Well, it can take even a whole month because of the bureaucracy in the process, and at the same time the transportation process and the clearing with the cargo, those people who bring the items. So it takes a long time. Yeah.
Thank you, Abubakar Abdullahi. You can hear what the traders are saying and what their expectations are this afternoon when the budget will be read by Ambassador Ukur Yatani. Most of them here are saying that the ease of doing business and the cost of doing business plus the cost of importing their goods from overseas and the process of clearance from the port of Mombasa to the warehouses to their businesses, because some of them are saying that it takes almost 1 month, and before they get their goods that they have ordered from overseas, some of them you find that they got customers, but they are not in a position to sell what they sell because some of their goods are in the warehouses. So that is one of expectations they are having this afternoon when the Treasury CS will be addressing the country and reading the 2020-21 budget, the budget approximations, the budget allocations in different ministries, and especially matters regarding the SMEs, because Abubakar Abdullahi, you understand that most of the Kenyans are employed in the informal sector, and the SMEs are a great backbone to the economy. And therefore, if these SMEs will fail, according to what the CBK was saying, then it means that the economy will continue to go down. And you understand, right now the economy has grown downwards from the year 2018, to the year 2019. Therefore, if we continue the SMEs continue to experience the problems they are experiencing right now, then it shows that businesses here in the country will continue to go down. As you can see here, maybe this is one of the stalls here. It is not opened as today. Clothes are being sold here, and that tells you the effect that coronavirus has had in the country. Because this stall right now, if it was operating, it means that this stall was in a position to provide income for the person who was in this business. Right now, Abubakar, Abubakar Abdullahi, I want to speak to one trader here, another trader here who ships phone from abroad. He tell us what is his expectations this afternoon when the Ambassador Ukur Yatani.
All right, reporter Mwangi Maina, before you even talk to that trader, I want to ask
Welcome
you a question.
and tell us what are your expectations today?
What are SMEs owners telling you? Have they reduced their manpower as well, in as far as firing some of their employees is concerned, which in a nutshell will translate to job losses for some?
800, but now currently the importation cost is at 1300. So that one is bringing a huge difference compared to earlier on, which is bringing a repercussion in our business. As you can see, the hooks are still almost empty because the importation cost is going way upwards beyond our expectation. Yeah.
Maybe probably before coronavirus, how many people had you employed in your business right now, and how many people do you have currently?
Okay, currently I had people who used to do deliveries. I had almost 7 people who had employed in my business premises because we used to take our imported goods to different areas. But now currently, because even the importation cost has gone much higher, you can see that I have only 2 people in my custody right now. Yeah.
All right, thank you so much for speaking to us. Abubakar Abdullahi, back to you in studio.
All right, Mwangi Maina, that's our reporter Mwangi Maina coming to us live from Nairobi CBD, of course talking to small, medium enterprise owners in as far as the COVID-19 economic hit is concerned. But before I let you go, there is the credit buffer from the 53.7 billion shillings that was set aside by the president. Of course, a seed capital of 3 billion shillings going to SMEs. What are the SME owners, operators telling you in as far as this seed capital is concerned? Are they even aware that there is a credit buffer in the first place?
Well, Abubakar, when I was speaking to some of the traders previously here, I asked them about the economic stimulus package that President Uhuru Kenyatta brought into place. But majority of them say, those who are aware, they say the process of getting money to bring to their businesses, the process is a little bit complicated. The process is long, and before they get that money, it will take them a lot of time. Some of them are not aware of this stimulus package. Some of them, they are in the dark. They don't know what the stimulus package means for them. They do not understand what it means for them and how it can be used to bring their businesses afloat. Abubakar, back to you.
All right, Mwangi Maina, before I finally let you go, what are the operators of these small, medium enterprises, the owners telling you, what do they want the government to do as of now?
Well, Abubakar, most of them here are expecting that when the Treasury CS Ukur Yatani will be reading the budget to the country this afternoon, a majority of them, first of all, they have complaints on the import duty that they are being taxed to bring their goods here in the country. Secondly, they are saying the time they receive their goods in the port, and by the time they are getting their goods to bring them in the stalls here, it takes quite some time. Also, they are expecting that maybe the tax will be reduced. What they pay right now to KRA will be reduced significantly, so that the cost of doing business will go down, and they will have something in their pockets at the end of the day.
All right, that is our reporter Mwangi Maina, of course, talking to SME owners in as far as the business and the economic hit of COVID-19 is concerned. We have an entire and well-packed special coverage for you. Our reporter Elizabeth Mutuku is as well on standby. My guest, Dr. David Kabaka, is already in studio to talk about, of course, the budget and make sense of the economic hit and what the budget has been in as far as the estimate is concerned. We have guests whom we will be talking to in as far as this special broadcast is concerned. Remember, you, the viewer at home or wherever you could be, can as well be part of this discussion. Send us a message on 22047. Call us on the number on your screen. Tell us your expectations, what you want to hear from the mouth of the man whose words the country waits for a bated breath. Call us on the number on your screen. Send us a message. The hashtag to use is this morning being special budget. Of course, we will incorporate some of your views into that discussion. Now, let's bring in our reporter, Elizabeth Mutuku, as well as in Parliament, of course, following up on the budget presentation that will be done later on in the afternoon. But Liz, what is first the situation like in Parliament in comparison to what it was in the previous budget readings?
Well, good afternoon, just Abubakar Abdullahi. Just as you said, it's a big day for the budget today, and in today's budget, about 2.7 billion shillings budget estimate is what is expected to be presented today. But then there is the issue of debt, which has been a concern to major Kenyans, and not only Kenyans but also lawmakers. But now I'm being joined by Makali Mulu, who is a member of Parliament from Kitui Central, but also a member of the Budget Committee, to explain and expound more on the debt issue and what they've given priority in today's budget. Welcome, Mheshimiwa. I understand today's budget, we are looking at 2.7 trillion shillings for the nation. But there is this issue of debt, which has been a major concern to you and to many of Kenyans. What are we going to do to get out of this, or what is needed to be done? Are we able to survive on our own taxes and our own means?
Thank you very much. As you did put it, the truth of the matter is we have a budget of 2.72 trillion this financial year, and out of that budget we are only going to fund, as Kenyans will be funding about 1.8 trillion, meaning that the rest of the money will be borrowing. This year the projected borrowing is about 580 billion. And when you look at the budget, this financial year, 2020-2021, we are going to spend 904 billion to pay past debt. And then we'll be borrowing this year also. So when you look at the issue of public debt, it's becoming an issue of concern. And I've said many times, when you look at what we call the international indicators of debt, for example, you look at the thresholds recommended by institutions like World Bank, like IMF, what we call the debt service, public debt service ratio to revenue, we have already gone above what is recommended. When you look at the public debt service to export earnings ratio, we have gone above. When you look at how much we have set for debt this year to pay debt, for example, we are paying 904 billion. When you look at the development budget, it's about 580 billion. So you can even see we are going to spend more money to pay debt, to repay debt, as compared to the money we are going to put to development. So I think as Kenyans, really, to me, and I've said very many times, what we need to do as Kenyans is we need to start what I call austerity measures so that we live within our means. It might not be difficult, but I just always give a very simple example of a family kind of situation. If you have been affording meat every day as a family, and things change, your financial position goes southwards. Normally what you will do is you can say, I will take meat now 2 days, to other 2 days I will take sukuma wiki, other 2 days I will take ndengu, so that you reorganize your own budget to survive. And that should not be different from a country. As a country, time has come where we say now, we must only fund essentials, what I will call very essential things. And where we think we have a bit of a free room in terms of luxuries, we can paint luxuries for about a year or two, so that we get our economy back to track. And this year is going to be even worse because of the COVID-19. You know, we have projected a revenue collection of about 1.6 domestic, forgetting that this year, the year closing in June, we had projected 1.6, we collected only 1.4, a shortfall of about 200 billion. Now we are projecting 1.8 to collect 1.6. So you see, generally, we are going to have challenges. So what I would comment is to manage the issue of public debt. I think it is important as Kenyans, we started living within our means. Our means means we look at the revenue we're generating locally, reduce borrowing, and then plan our activities, programs, projects within what we can afford. And we can do this for a few years. But when things improve, then we go back to our normal situation.
You're telling this to us, and especially to Kenyans. Have you proposed this to the budget committee as you are preparing this budget?
You know, as a budget committee, what we do is normally we would give our recommendations. And whether the executive will be able to implement the recommendations or not,
That normally is their work. As a parliament, our work is to look at the policy and allocate resources based on the policies, and then implementation becomes the work of the executive. And where we have given our recommendations, we would imagine that they will be able to take the recommendations and implement them. But it's totally different matter. Recommending and implementations are totally different matter. But we have already given these recommendations. We have said we are living beyond our means as a country, and the time has come where we must really accept reality that as a country we must live within our means.
I understand education, infrastructure, and health are some of the sectors which have been given priority. Do you think it's time we would have given education a priority, given the fact you hear from the arguments of parents that schools are not open, some other, so the budget wouldn't have been allocated that much for the education sector?
Yeah, I would say education is a unique sector, and I think Kenyans need to get this right. When you look at this year's budget, education sector has the highest budget of 504 billion. But when you look at that 504 billion, 265 is payment of salaries to the teachers. So even though schools are closed, salaries must be paid because teachers are still going to earn salaries. So you only remain with about 240 for the actual development. The other issues like universities, like technical institutes. So really, education budget is a bit unique. But you must remember, when you look at the ranking of the sectors, health is fifth ranked. So from the national budget. So health has about over 100 billion for health, which is going to address issues of COVID-19. But in addition to that, we must remember that health sector is also devolved. So part of the money going to the counties, the 316.5 billion going to the counties, should also have a portion of that money going to health sector. So health sector has a lot of resources when you compare what goes to the counties and what is left at the headquarters. But my fear is the implementation issue. The big question is, these counties have been getting money every year, which they allocate to the health sector. When you look at the level of preparedness today, most of them are not prepared at all. So you ask yourself, if they have taken about 8 years and they are not prepared today, giving them money this year, is it going to change the situation? More likely not. So I would just want to encourage the governors that as they do their budgets, this particular year needs huge budget of their allocation to go to the health sector, and that will help the sector so that we address the issues of COVID-19. And come next year, if God willing, COVID-19 will be not with us, then we can go back to the actual plan.
Sure, there is this issue of corruption, which is a major challenge in the country. What would have been done during the budget processing and budget making to ensure that we curb this?
Anyway, reports of the Auditor General have always indicated that we lose a third of our budget to misappropriation or corruption, what I would call corruption. Meaning, for example, if you take about this year's budget, which is 2.7 trillion, about 900 billion is likely to be lost through corruption or misdirection of resources. And what we are saying is, as a parliament, our work is to make laws, to provide legal framework so that corruption can be addressed. And I can tell you for sure, this country, in terms of legal framework, we have what it takes to do to address issues of corruption. And I think now time has come, and that's why I want to thank the president for this push. He has always been saying he wants to fight corruption as part of his legacy, so that when he comes out of the office, corruption will be reduced to a level that he can say, I did fight corruption the way I expected it. And that's why I urge Kenyans to support the president, because unless we fight this animal called corruption, we are likely to continue having a lot of resources disappearing, and then we will not grow our economy. And I can tell you for sure, where you don't have a development budget, you don't have growth of the economy. So you can't grow the cake. And then Kenyans will keep on saying we have not enough money. So for me, corruption is one of the things. As a country, we must all say that we tolerate no corruption at all as a country. Every Kenyan should say, I don't tolerate corruption, and I will not support anything which deals with corruption. In that case, we will save our economy. Otherwise, the way things are now, we are in shit. And we must really pray for this country even as we implement the policies. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That has been Mheshimiwa Makali Mulu on what should be done to ensure that the resources they allocate in different sectors are used in the way they are supposed to be. And one thing he's said it clearly is about the corruption issues and more so the debt sector. It's about time Kenyans learn to live within their means. Back to you in the studio, Abubakar Abdullah.
Well, that is our reporter Elizabeth Mutuku live from Parliament. Of course, she was speaking to Makali Mulu, Kitui Central Member of Parliament, who has raised among issues. Of course, they talked of the debt. The debt as of now in the country stands at 6.2 trillion shillings. Parliament raised the debt ceiling to 9 trillion shillings, this making it possible for the country to borrow an extra 2.8 trillion shillings if the need be. Of course, the lawmaker has also faulted the preparedness of the counties in as far as combating COVID-19 and the healthcare system in the counties is concerned. Moving on with the broadcast, let's bring in our reporter Nancy Kimuyu, who is on standby as well. Nancy joins us now in this broadcast. The country's breath is held, the eyes fixated at where you are, which is Treasury. What do we know as of now, Nancy? Is the CS there?
Okay, thank you very much. Abu Bakar, back at the communication center. Well, I can get you loud and clear here outside the Treasury building. Now, it is an expectant day for many Kenyans. Today being the 11th of June 2020, where the current CS of Treasury, Ekuru Yotani, is expected to table the budget statements before the National Assembly. Now, this year's photo op will be very different compared to different years in that we are going through a pandemic. Now, in occurrence, how it is supposed to be, the CS Ekuru Yotani is supposed to come out of this building where he will take pictures with the PS, who in this case is Julius and other committee members. They do take pictures when they are very close to each other as he displays the briefcase in order for the pictures to be taken. But this year it will be so different because we are facing a pandemic. Yes, because we are facing a pandemic, probably the CS and the other committee members won't be standing very close to each other. They will probably be 1 meter away. All of them are expected to be wearing masks as it is the directive given by the Ministry of Health. Now, we are also waiting and very expectant to see whether or not the chairman for the Budget and Appropriations Committee will be present. Remember, he is among the 7 MPs who are asked to present reasons as to why they should not be axed from the Budget Committee. Now, he also cited, Ishongwa and his committee, cited that the budget presented by the CS Ekuru Yotani is unrealistic and cannot be met. We are currently outside the Treasury waiting to see how the proceedings will be carried out. Remember, this year, according to the Ministry of Health, the number of MPs who will be sitting in the chambers have been limited. The cocktail party, which is normally held after the highlights, will also not be held due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Back to you in studio, Abu Bakar.
Thank you, our reporter Nancy Kimuyu, who is talking to us as well live from Treasury, of course, where the country's eyes are fixated. And as far as the rituals are concerned, of course, the Treasury Cabinet Secretary, Ekuru Yotani's office being there, he'll be expected to move from there traditionally in a ritual, which includes posing for a photo, of course, before the presentation of the budget, getting to the Parliament. Of course, that fanfare and the color we will, of course, observe as well, but may not be there. Of course, the COVID-19 pandemic and the regulations, which may not allow necessarily some of the regulations and some of the, of course, traditions and as far as the presentation of the budget is concerned. But nonetheless, time for us to take a short break here on this special broadcast. We still have a lot lined up for you. We'll be back with that much more after this break.
the exciting world of M-Truck Solutions, your trusted provider for
Well, this is a special coverage of the 2.7 trillion budget. Welcome back. Thank you for making time for us and, of course, being part of this discussion. Earlier on, we spoke to our reporters from Parliament to Treasury to where Kenyans are in as far as their opinion is concerned. Let's bring in an expert to the discussion. Dr. David Kabata, an economist, joins us live on discussion now. Dr. thank you for making time for us. 2.7 trillion budget. Is there anything good for Kenyans first in this budget?
Abubakar, I think this is one of the most difficult times to be reading a budget, especially for Ambassador Yatani. And actually, I sympathize with him because the kind of the problems that we have as a country, I think, are bigger than the budgets that we are reading. 2.7 trillion budget. Out of that 2.7 trillion budget, we can only be able to collect 1.6 trillion. KRA can only collect 1.6 trillion. We have a recurrent expenditure of about 1.8 trillion. We have a proportion of about 590 billion to the development projects. And then we have 904 billion for payment of interest.
Debt obligations.
Debt obligations.
Which begs the question, where then does that leave developmental budgets?
Actually, if you look at that budget and you look at the situation we are right now, even collecting 1.6 trillion is very difficult for us. And I'll give you an example. In 2018-2019 budget, the country collected 1.58 trillion. And if you look at the environment during that time and the environment today, it was very different. So for me, I expect the KRA or the government to just collect about 1.2 trillion, 1.3 trillion, based on the problem of the COVID-19.
Even though this week Treasury Cabinet Secretary Ukuru Yatani said the government has missed annual revenue collection target by accumulatively 1 trillion shillings for the last 7 years. This brings the question of revenue collection and expenditure. Where can a government such as ours find a balance between the two?
Actually, right now we should not even be talking about where to collect money from, because we are supposed to be talking about surviving as an economy.
But for you to allocate money, you must collect it. That's simple economics, isn't it, Dr.?
You have to collect money. But where are you collecting from? Look at what the COVID-19 pandemic has done to our country. It has affected the demand side of the economy and the supply side of the economy. And when I talk about the demand side of the economy, I'm talking about the consumption of me and you. Meaning that me and you do not have enough money to consume. That is the demand side of the economy. It has affected the supply side of the economy. That is the production part of the economy. Now, where do you collect money from when Kenyans are not consuming and Kenyans are not also producing? It is a very difficult situation for us as a country.
For a minute, let's forego, of course, what cannot be forgone, which is the COVID-19 pandemic status. But nonetheless, for the last 7 years, we were not under any pandemic in as far as health-wise is concerned. But when Treasury CS says the country has failed to match and meet its target, that is an indictment to the government, isn't it, and revenue collection methods?
Yes. And one of the challenges that we have had as a country is that we have a problem in collection of taxes. If you look at the number of the people who don't pay taxes in this country, we have a big chunk, especially the so-called MSMEs. I like talking about MSMEs basically because the micro enterprises are very many in this country. Actually, majority, about 90% or 80% of the businesses are micro enterprises. Now, majority of these micro enterprises do not pay taxes. And actually, that is why you see the government has been trying as much as possible to try and bring them into what we call the tax bracket. And that is one of the big challenges that we have, especially when it comes to collection of money.
All right, I also understand we have on Skype Joe Halende, who joins us. He's a political commentator as well, joining us for this discussion. 2.7 trillion budget. Let me ask you the very question I asked David. Is there anything to smile about? What is good for Kenyans in this budget?
There is nothing to smile about. There's nothing good for Kenyans in that budget. for simple reason. Even without the pandemic that we're experiencing now, the government of Kenya has been failing to collect revenue. KRA has been careless. KRA has been misusing our support as Kenyan, have not been creative in terms of creating a base in which we can collect enough revenue to meet our budget. So with this pandemic and the way our economy has received a beating, I'm seeing a situation where we are going into more debts as a country because we are going to rely on borrowing. So there's nothing to smile for Kenyans.
Joe, you say there's nothing to smile for Kenyans, but nonetheless, this is not a Kenya's exclusive problem, isn't it? The entire global economy is under a recession.
Yes, but specifically, let me give you an example of a country like Germany. Germany has decided to take a different angle from other countries, and it's doing well. Its economy, it's expanding. Germany has focused on three things: taxes, rent, and grants. In terms of taxes, Germany has been able to allow businesses of certain caliber not to be taxed for a certain time until the end of coronavirus, so that money can be able to be on circulation. In terms of rent, German government, with the help of the landlords in Germany, they have allowed businesses and people not to pay taxes for the period that we're experiencing this pandemic. And in terms of grant, German government has provided funds to businesses which are employing approximately from 20 to a number of employers, so that those businesses cannot run out of business. And Germany has really...
All right, nonetheless, of course, you are comparing Kenya to Germany. Germany has the highest national economy in Europe. Of course, some will raise questions of that comparison. Nonetheless, let me bring Dr. David Kabata back to the discussion. Joe says there's nothing to smile about, but let's talk of the global economy as well before we get to the specifics of Kenya. There are those who say this could be worse than the Great Recession, the Great Depression. How worse is the global economy from the ravages of COVID-19?
The situation is bad, and one of the reasons it's quite bad is because of what I've explained there. Because what COVID has done is that it has had an effect on both the supply and also the demand side of the economy. And I've said that people are not able to produce, people are not able to consume. An economy is driven by the consumption and production of goods and services within a country. So when countries cannot be able to do that, then it becomes very difficult for them to collect money. You see, the GDP of a country, of what we call the gross domestic product, is what the government is what the government is able to collect within a duration period of time. So when the government cannot be able to produce, then it cannot be able to collect anything from what it cannot be able to produce. So those are some of the challenges that are there. This is a problem that is there globally, and I think we need to look for innovative way of solving some of those challenges, because as long as we have social distancing and the problem of the lockdown, then we are still going to have a problem of production and also consumption.
All right, of course, that global recession and the economic effect is having a trickle-down effect in as far as economies across the world is concerned. Kenya not being left out. Nonetheless, let's talk of some of the gainers in the budget, the presidency, the education system, of course, education being a sector, infrastructure as well, treasury. But it seems as though there should have been more focus on the health sector, which has a budget of 111 billion shillings.
I think so, because when people are not healthy, people cannot be able to produce. We go back to production. It's only healthy people who can be able to produce. And I think right now, this would have been the best time for us to be able to do what we call to revamp our health sector. I know health is a devolved function, but I think it is important for us to start thinking about how our people can live healthy, because there's no way the people in the counties are going to be able to produce goods and services when they cannot be able to live a healthy life. So the government would have done better by increasing the amount of the money that they put in health, and also trying as much as possible to see that there is an impact that is created by that money. Because it is one thing to put money into the health sector, but also something else to utilize the money in the right way.
There is mixed reaction seemingly from economists of the budget in as far as the 2020-2021 budget estimates and what has been approved by Parliament is concerned. What is your view first as a general reaction to the estimates and the specifications in as far as the allocations are concerned?
For me, the estimates are ambitious. The estimates, we are not going to get that, some of those estimates that we are talking about there, basically because of the situation that we are in. And this will, we people are going to be able to see some of these things as we continue, especially as the year progresses. And you'll see so many cuts in that budget, basically because the amount of money that we are going to collect, especially the KRA, will be less than what we are estimating.
Fair enough. Let me bring back Joe Halende to the discussion, of course, a political commentator. Joe, there is a mixed reaction. Same question as I had asked David in the discussion. There's a mixed reaction and feeling in as far as the allocations to some departments, some stakes within government is concerned. What is your general reaction to the budget statement?
My general reaction to the budget statement is as simple as this. Our budget should have focused more on health for simple reason. And we go back to the basic. Resources should follow functions. Health is a devolved function which has been taken to the counties. But up to date, if you ask governors, have they received the money that the president promised to help them fight this pandemic? They have not received. So it is as simple as that the government should talk less and do more. If our budget estimate is certain amount, which you can hear from my good friend David is saying, those estimates are too ambitious for us, and we are going to be seeing the cuts. Currently, we need to focus on health so that we can save the country and be able to survive throughout the pandemic, so that we can pick up after the pandemic.
Joe, the health docket has a budget of 111 billion shillings. This is 18.89 billion shillings increase. You're not satisfied with that increase?
Not satisfied with that increase, but we need to see that money following the functions to the county government. That money should not remain at the treasury or at the Ministry of Health. That money belongs to the county. For example, I come from Busia County. Currently, Busia County, combined with Bungoma County, have no single ICU bed, have no single ventilator. And you can hear the reports from Busia County about the COVID spread in Busia County. So what we are simply asking as a people is that the money being allocated for health should move to the counties. And we need to hear from the Council of Governors, chaired by Wycliffe Oparanya. He needs to be heard on the national government so that money can go to the counties, not to remain at the Ministry of Health. Because
Joe, let me ask you this. Of course, the national government and the county governments have each their specified functions. But nonetheless, Kenya promulgated a new constitution in 2010, which brought out devolution. The governors have been in office for 7 years now, for those who are serving their second term. When you say there are counties that lack ICU beds, shouldn't that not be a question to ask the governors?
If you ask the governors, they will point a finger to the national government.
But the genuine finger should be pointed at who?
At the national government, because money is not following function.
But we have seen the allocations year in, year out.
Yes, that's actually, if we want to get the real, to the bottom of this matter, we should focus and ask this question to the county government. And they will tell you, honestly speaking, money has not been following function. Actually, that's where the problem is. The problem is not on budget allocation, the current budget allocation, the current increase, that's okay. But we need to see Treasury working on it. Money should move to the counties. Counties are suffering.
All right, let me bring in Dr. David. At that point, let me bring in Dr. David to the discussion. No problem with allocations, as Joe says, but there's a problem with the spending.
Yes. Actually, if you look at our counties and the amount of money that have gone to the counties since the 2013 election, we have something to do. We are talking about something to do with 2.1, 2.4 trillion. A lot of money. But if you look at the impact of that money in all those counties, you cannot see it. And actually, one of the big challenges that we have as a country is that we devolved our government. But for me, I always say that the devolved government, the people who went, who are part and parcel of the devolved government, did not really understand the main reason behind the devolution. Because the main purpose of devolution was to get the resources near to the people, and on top of that, to make the counties production zones or production sectors for this country, for this economy. Actually, right now, as I'm speaking, I am on the opinion that the counties should be giving money to the government, not the other way around. Actually, we should have some few counties that are giving money to the government because of how much they have produced and have been able to sell. But what we have is a situation where the counties have always been waiting for the government to give them money. Yet, majority of the resources in this country are found in the counties. So we have a big challenge.
If the county governments, looking at the top 10 gainers of this from this budget, the county governments are number one. If there's this amount of money getting to the county governments, where then is the link, if not the missing link, between the monies allocated and what the projects are in as far as the spending is concerned?
I think the challenge is that people we elect in some of those counties, they have no vision, especially when it comes to looking at what is supposed to happen in those counties. Because look at some of those counties, they have enough resources that they can be able to be utilized. And I also think that the whole issue of having a very big recurrent expenditure, even in the county, is a big challenge, where you see majority of the money that goes to the county is used to repayment of salaries and also administrative duties. That's another challenge that we have in the counties. But having trickled down 2.4 trillion to the counties as per now, we need to be seeing massive projects happening in the counties, because that is a lot of money. Actually, that is a budget for one calendar year of this country that we cannot be able to say what it has done.
All right, Dr. David, yesterday you spoke to one of my colleagues, Joash Onsare, and I quote you on what you said. We cannot be paying debts to the tune of 1 trillion shillings annually.
Yes. I said that because if you look at how much we are supposed to collect is 1.6 trillion. And then we have a debt, we are servicing debt at a cost of 904 billion. We are living dangerously. That is a dangerous life, especially if we have to do anything, especially when it comes to the development issues. And we need to think about that debt. And I said yesterday that one thing that I have even heard most of the MPs talking about and the experts is that we need to think about how we can be able to renegotiate that debt. Unless we do that, then we are living dangerously as a country.
But the same members of parliament who are saying we should renegotiate some of these are the ones who have raised the debt ceiling to 9 trillion shillings.
Yes, because we could not have survived without the debt. We live beyond our means, and because that is our...
Which begs the question, what is the economical sense of borrowing more than you can live with?
That is the challenge that I'm talking about. We live beyond our means. If you look at most of those things that are there in that budget, some of those things we can do without. Look at issues of travels. Why have we even put little money, that little money in travels? Who is going to travel and how are you going to do it? Why can't we put that money in other areas? And then when COVID is over, we can think about how we can be able to come up with a supplementary budget of bringing in travel budgets later.
All right, let me bring in Joe Halende to the discussion. Joe, the current debt stands at 6.3 trillion shillings. Parliament raised the debt ceiling to 9 trillion shillings, which in return means the government can borrow an extra 2.8 trillion shillings, which talks about the financial discipline of the country. Are we, as a country, is the government financially disciplined?
As a government, we are not financially disciplined for simple reason. We have misplaced priorities. Currently, as the way my good friend Doctor said, is that there are some things in the budget which we do not need them. The things to do with the transport and infrastructures, the mega projects which we were doing as a country needs to be stopped, actually need to be paused for a while, so that we can save the economy. Actually, we need to focus on almost like 4 things. We need to save our key sectors. That is the hotel industry, that is the horticultural industry, basically our agriculture and our tourism. Then we need to have more money in circulation. Since the government is the biggest business partner in this country, needs to start paying some of the bills that they have been having, so that money can circulate. Then we need to support the SMEs, because these are the sectors which are providing more taxes to the government. So we need to have them supported by reducing the rent, the taxes, by actually pausing rents, and by government enabling them to access grants from banks at a lower rate, or being able to get funds so that they can repay later at 0 interest. Then we need to support
Joe, the country
farmers.
is already in debt. Where can the country then get this money from? It's already in debt.
What about the 40 billion that we received the other month? Where did it go? It went on ambulances, it went on tea. That's why I'm saying we have misplaced priorities as a country, and that's why we are having these huge debts as a country. We focused more on infrastructure, forgetting that some of this infrastructure, even if you look at the reports that we were receiving from this, for a good example, the SGR, we were told that the SGR, even after completing that project, it cannot sustain itself. So we needed as a country to reevaluate that project and at least pause some money from there. Then we are talking about mega infrastructure like the one they are talking about, building a super highway from Mombasa to Nairobi, or building a super highway from Westlands to the airport. Such project needs to be paused because our economy is doing bad. On June 3rd, Treasury released a report and said that actually 1 million Kenyans have lost their jobs. About 3 million are in the process of losing their jobs because they are on unleave leave that they cannot be paid. So we are talking about also 6 million Kenyans could lose their jobs if the economic activities remain low. So we need to focus more on seeing money circulating in the economy than certain projects which are going to cause more harm to us economically.
All right, Joe, point made. Let me bring Dr. David to the discussion. President Uhuru Kenyatta, who himself was the country's finance minister between 2009 to 2011, has more than in 3 occasions defended the reasons as to why the government has spent so on projects such as the Standard Gauge Railway and other projects. He argues and is of the opinion and point that this will have in return an influence on the country's macroeconomics. First, is there a justified need to have spent so much of the country's borrowed monies on such massive projects?
Actually, the economy is made up of two areas. We have what we call the hardware and the software. So when you talk about the infrastructure, we are talking about the hardware part of the economy. And I'm also one of those people who believe that if the money is put in the right infrastructure, what you are going to do, or what you are going to see is a more productive nation. But now, when it comes to the SGR, the challenge that we had is that it is not an infrastructural development that was supposed to bring money as quickly as we thought. I'll give you an example. If you look at just a road like Thika Road, which took only 32 billion Kenyan shillings, you see how much it has been able to open up some of those areas for productive purposes. That is the essence of what we call the hardware part of it. But as much as you also think about the hardware part of it, part of the economy, you also need to think about the software, the me and you. And that is what that gentleman, Ahenda, is talking about. How can our people survive? Because right now, the problem is not even the hardware. The problem is survival. We are talking about a situation where our people are sleeping without food. They have lost jobs, massive loss of jobs. How can we help them? Some of these businesses that we are talking about, the MSMEs, the micro enterprise. I remember the governor of the central bank said that majority of them will die by June this year. So what do we do with them? Because 90% of the Kenyans, about 80 to 90% of the Kenyans are employed by these MSMEs. So how are they going to survive if some of these businesses are going to die by June or July? So we need to think about the software part of the economy.
David, if you look at the 8.53.7 billion stimulus package that President Uhuru Kenyatta's government launched, a 3 billion seed capital has been set aside for SMEs to guarantee a scheme which will provide cheap credit for small businesses. 3 billion, is it enough in your own view?
If you look at the situation that we are right now, 53 billion is very little money actually.
And that is generally the entire stimulus package, 53.7.
It is very little money. Now, go to 3 billion. That is a drop in the ocean, especially when it comes to, you see, what really amazes me with these guys is that they even talk about SMEs, small, medium enterprise. They do not add what we call the micro enterprises. And these are the ones that drive the economy actually of this country. The ones that employ between 1 and 9 employees. That is why I'm saying, and we need to echo very high, that we need to save some of those micro enterprises, because these are the ones that employ majority of the Kenyans.
And what will saving those micro enterprises entail?
Now, one of the things is to make sure that they are able to access some of those grants. I'm not even talking about loans. I'm talking about grants, because when you talk about a loan, giving a business that is already dying because there is no consumption, then it becomes very difficult. And how is that money going to get to those SMEs that we are talking about, MSMEs that we are talking about? Because I have been a banker, and I'll tell you something. If you people are putting the money through the banking system to get to the SMEs, you're wasting time. It is not going to happen.
How should it be done?
And I'll tell you why it will not happen. Because banks are in business of making money. So you do not expect them to give money to people who are to businesses that are not going to survive. So we need to come up with a way, a policy that can be able to help our money get to some of those businesses directly.
All right, let me bring back Joe to the discussion. In March, President Uhuru Kenyatta cut the value-added tax rate to 14% from 16%. The corporation tax was as well reduced from 30% to 25%. Just on the percentages of these, could it be enough, or there could be something more that needed to be done as well?
There's something that is needed to be done, and I want to echo what the doctor has said. And the doctor is spot on. The drivers of this economy are micro enterprises. And this is where the government needs to focus on. And as I was giving you an example earlier about German, we just need to focus on 3 things in this budget. That's what we ought to do. To focus on taxes, to focus on rent, and to focus on grants. Make these grants accessible to these micro enterprise and these SMEs, so that they can be able to get money, so that the business can continue and our economy can continue, and money keeps circulating and money keeps in people's pockets at the lower level. Then we need to at least postpone the rent payment, so that we can reduce the burden that these people are being exhausted to. Then we can be able as a country to move on. But if you are talking about the money and the ambitious budget that we are going to see, if that money doesn't reach to the lowest people in this country, we are going to suffer.
All right, Joe, twice in this interview you have made reference to Germany, which has the largest national economy in Europe, a GDP of 3.9 trillion shillings in comparison to what we have as 2.7 trillion shillings. Germany has $3.9 trillion rather. When you compare such economies with the measures that you are putting forth, is it realistic?
It is realistic because from my good friend Dr. what he is saying is actually what we need to copy from German. It's not about the total budget estimates. It's not about the huge budget. It's how that budget is being effected.
No, I'm drawing the variance
being implemented.
I'm drawing the variance between the GDPs of these two countries and the economic heavyweight that one is and one isn't.
Yes. You see, how are we going to implement certain issues? And actually, what we are supposed to borrow from German, it's not about comparing the GDP. It's about how have they been able to sustain the economy during this period. How are they implementing certain issues? That's where I'm getting. And we need to focus on the implementation part. How this money is, the little money that we have, the little economy that we have with the little GDP, we need to implement certain things right by focusing on micro enterprise and SMEs. If we do that, then we are going to move to the next phase of this pandemic, at least when we have survived. But if we don't, I don't want to be the prophet of doom.
All right, let me bring David to the discussion since you don't want to be the prophet of doom. I'm not saying David should be anyway. And there are those who hold the view that 53.7 billion ingest to the economy is not enough. Inject more liquidity to the market to the tune of 5 to 7% of the GDP. First, is it realistic to inject 7 to 5% of the country's GDP as a stimulus?
Yes. It is realistic, and I'll say why. I'll tell you why it is realistic. I've just told you right now, we have a problem of demand and supply. How do you resuscitate that economy without injecting money so that people can be able to consume and people can also be able to produce? And that is why we are saying that the budget was supposed to look at those two twin issues. How are people going to survive? Because if you are able to produce goods and services and people cannot be able to afford them, then you are wasting time. You are not going to be able to collect the money that we are talking about. So as we can inject as much as possible if it is going to help in the recovery of the economy, both in the spending part and also the production part of it.
And injecting more doesn't necessarily translate to borrowing more to service this?
Now that is the challenge that we have in this country, because you see we are already in catch-22 position where we do not have enough money for ourselves because we live beyond our means. And therefore, what it means is that we are either going to get grants, like we have been getting from some of these institutions, get what we call the concessional loans, cheap loans, because another challenge that we have had is a situation where we go for expensive loans at 9%, when we have concessional loans at 1.5 or 1% that we can be able to get from some of these institutions. So we get cheap money and try to resuscitate the economy. Remember, this is an economy that was still at an ICU even before the COVID-19. So we are getting into a bigger hole than we were in because of the challenge of production and also the consumption.
All right, Joe, we talked of the debt at a country level. Let's get it to the lower level and trickle it down to what me and you and anyone who is watching this will have to pay or have as a debt on your head today as we speak. Every Kenyan has a debt of 189,218 shillings. This, of course, being a breakdown from the 6.2 trillion shillings debt, understanding that the country has a population of 47,564,296 people. My question is then, what is the voice of these people in as far as the government's economic roadmap or outline is concerned, does any Kenyan who is watching this broadcast have a say in the economic direction that the country is heading to?
Any Kenyan that is watching the show has a say in our economy. As a democracy, we elect leaders to represent us. We can start from there. Our leaders, most especially the MPs who are involved in the budget making process, were supposed to voice what Kenyans are saying. Secondly, we have representatives in certain sectors, like the institutions that we have, which have been involved in the budget making process, where Kenyan voice can be voiced in the proper channel. Then secondly, like what we are doing, we are voicing what Kenyans are really undergoing. And to me, is something that persistently, like the way the doctor said, our economy was already doing bad before even this pandemic. And again, we are in a bigger hole where we are not supposed even to imagine to start digging, to continue digging. We are supposed to be surviving and focusing on key issues that will help us to survive. That is what the normal Kenyans want.
All right, you say we should be focusing. You say we should be focusing on surviving. If, from your own observation, from the budget estimates, is that survival given a prominence in your own view?
No.
All right, let me bring Daktari to the question then. If, as Joe says, and you have a right to agree or disagree with his point of view, says the survival has not been given prominence, it has not been the highlight of this budget, is it then an economic error to have been committed?
Now, the reason as to why he is saying that he cannot be able to see the issue of survival being part and parcel of the budget is because of what we have been saying here. People cannot be able to produce. People have nothing to spend. So what do you do as a country? You start thinking about what we call welfare. How can our people survive the pandemic that we have here? And that is why you hear some of these people talking about reduction of rent or trying to see whether our people can be able to get maybe something small to pay for the rent. Because for me, I know it is difficult for the government to tell people not to pay rent because the whole issue of housing is a private entity, and therefore it is hard for the government to come into that. But the government can do something simple. Try to see whether we can be able to apportion some few little money to some of these Kenyans so that they can be able to do what we call to continue surviving. We have seen it happen in the elderly, where they get about 10 billion. I think there's 10 billion for the elderly, the disabled and the elderly. That's our welfare. So how do we reach the common mwananchi? Because the same struggles that you see with the elderly is the same thing that is happening with the common mwananchi. And I do believe that we have a starting point, the Huduma number. The Huduma number gives us the information about even the capability of the Kenyans, because that is the information that was being collected. So how can we use it to help our people to get some of the welfare issues that we are talking about here?
David, this is not in defense of the government, but for purposes of this discussion, the government is pointing out to tax measures, packages, and as far as stimulus packages are concerned, that have been set out, outlined to cushion Kenyans from the economic hit of COVID-19. First, I'm not asking your reaction, but nonetheless, isn't this not at least a step in the right direction?
It was a step.
It was, you say?
Yes, it was a step in the right direction. But just look at that first stimulant, because I know you're talking about the first stimulant. Who did it point to? The people who earn less than 24,000. So it was going for the people who are employed. But how many people are employed in this country? The majority of the Kenyans are in self-employment, not employees. So what does that tell you? That the self-employment people were not catered for when it came to what we call the first stimulant package. I'll give you a very good example. Right now, as we speak, the teachers employed by private schools are crying because they cannot be paid by private schools when the private schools are closed. And how do these people survive? Those are the people that is why I'm saying that the stimulant package was very important for the people who are working, but not the people who are self-employed, and also the people who could not be, who do not have an income by themselves.
And what is the best way to cushion Kenyans who are self-employed then?
Now, we've talked about grants, especially when it comes to the people who are self-employed and they have small businesses. Those ones should get a grant so that at least their businesses should continue. I'll give you an example. I'm an owner of a small business. The first thing that I did after COVID came in was to tell my employees, some of the employees to go. Not because I am very heartless, but because the business could not be able to pay them. So that is what has happened to many micro enterprises. And that is why we are saying small businesses should get something that can be able to resuscitate their business or to have what we call a continuity of the business. Because unless that happens, the government is going to collect nothing from them.
All right, let me bring Joe back to the discussion. There are those who are of the opinion that reduce the interest rate, people will borrow more, hence have money in their pockets. What's your view?
Actually, what we are supposed to be doing is not even giving loans, it's supposed to be grants. There's a difference between loans and grants. When you are giving loans, you are again disadvantaging the businesses. And these businesses that the doc is talking about are supposed to be, most of these, self-employed. Yesterday I was talking to a friend of mine, and she told me she has a small boutique in town, and she told me at least she's able to survive during this period. And I asked her how and why. She told me that her landlord has allowed her to pay half the rent of the boutique, and that's how she's surviving, and that's how she's able at least to do some small and the business to survive throughout this period. So when somebody like that, what she needs is just grants, to access to grants, so that she can be able to continue employing her 3 employers at the boutique, and these 3 employers can continue being able to provide for the families at home. That's what a normal Kenyan or the current state we are in, we are supposed to be doing. These small businesses are supposed to be helped in a certain way so that they can be able to cater for rent, they can be able to access grants, and they can be able to sustain the business as we move on.
All right, Joe, the very theme of this year's budget is, quote, harnessing the big 4 for job creation and economic prosperity. Judging from the outlook and the happenings as of now, in as far as the ravages and the economic hit of COVID-19 is concerned, it seems as though there will be no job creation, neither will there be an economic prosperity.
Pardon?
The very theme of this year's budget is harnessing the big 4 for job creation and economic prosperity. In light with the pandemic and its ravages on the COVID-19, on the global economy and the Kenyan economy, it seems as though there will be fewer jobs, if at all there will be any, plus the economic prosperity will not be as prosperous as the theme of this year's budget would have wanted to outline.
From when we started this debate, I said we are suffering, our problem starts from how we prioritize things. Before this pandemic, the government was focused more on BBI. It even abandoned its big 4 agenda, the one it promised Kenya during the election. Now we are in a pandemic where over 1 million people have already lost their jobs. How are we going to create jobs?
And is it self-defeating to have such a theme then?
Pardon?
Is it self-defeating for a budget to have such a theme?
It is actually. We see the problem is that some people who come up with these ideas are not in touch with the real issues at the lower level. And that's why we normally have such misplaced titles and misplaced slogans when we are having such issues. Specifically because the people who are designing this thing or the technicians who are involved in coming up with certain titles, certain agendas for the country, they are not in touch with the real issues at the ground. Because
and just
we
to be
have
fair
agreed,
to them, even though they are professionals,
to be fair to them, they need actually the title or the theme of this budget today should have focused more on survival.
All right, Joe Halende there. Of course, Dr. David is as well with us in studio. Nonetheless, I understand we need to take a short break here on this special broadcast. We'll be back with this discussion and updates from our reporters who are equally on standby, from Treasury to Parliament to where Kenyans are as well, to brief us and bring us up to speed with the expectations. We'll be back after this break.